All right, let's get right into it. We're about to explore something that's going to challenge a really fundamental belief most of us have about how progress works, not just in business, but in our own lives. It's an idea that's so deep-seated, we hardly ever notice it's there. And here's that belief, that being more advanced, more developed, or more successful means you have to be more focused on the future, right? We're all taught that planning, five-year goals, and looking way down the road, that's the sign of smart, sophisticated thinking. But what if the actual data tells a completely different and, frankly, a much weirder story? Okay, look at this number. Just let it sink in. Negative 0.0813. Now, what is this? This is the actual statistical correlation between the highest, most complex level of human development we can measure, what the model calls turquoise, and having a focus on the future. Let me say that again because it's wild. The more someone operates from this incredibly integrated, holistic perspective, the less likely they are to be focused on the future. It's a negative correlation. So, to be clear, turquoise thinking is all about seeing the whole system, the deep interconnectedness of everything, long-term global health, and these big, sustainable patterns. You'd think a mindset this huge would be obsessed with the future, right? But the data says no. It suggests that from this point of view, constantly focusing on the future isn't a sign of progress. It's actually seen as a kind of fragmentation, like you're breaking reality apart instead of seeing it as it is. And this isn't some error in the math. This paradox is actually the first clue that unlocks a much deeper pattern in how we're all wired. It tells us that our relationship with time, past, present, or future, isn't just a personality quirk. It's a deep, fundamental adaptation. Yeah, you heard that right. It's not a bug. It's a feature. The core idea here is that different value systems, or vMEMEs, are basically designed to live in different time zones. Why? Because the problems they evolved to solve demand it. You know, a farmer's sense of time, which is all about seasons and cycles, is totally different from a day trader's, who's living in a world of nanoseconds. It's the exact same principle for our internal value systems. So each of these systems has its own unique temporal signature. It's like a built-in clock that's perfectly wound in tune for its specific purpose. Let's look at a couple of examples so you can really see how this plays out. Okay, let's start with orange. This is the mindset of ambition, achievement, and strategic competition. If you want to win in business, in your career, you have to be thinking about the next quarter, the next market trend, the next move. For orange, the future isn't some vague concept. It's a target you aim for and conquer. And sure enough, the data shows a clear positive correlation. Living in the future isn't a choice, it's a survival tactic. Now let's jump to a completely different clock. For the purple vMEME, which is all about the tribe, safety, and tradition, the past is everything. For example, some data out of Russia shows a strong positive correlation here. We're under massive external pressure. The past, the stories of ancestors, old traditions, historic victories, that's the sacred anchor that holds the entire group together. So purple isn't stuck in the past, it's anchored by the past. And that brings us all the way back to turquoise. So we know it has that weird negative link to the future. But look at this, it has a huge, massive positive correlation with the present. We're talking plus 0.62. For this mindset, reality isn't something you plan for out there. It's something you experience directly, right here, right now. The future isn't a target to be hit. It's a pattern that unfolds naturally from the quality of this very moment. This table just lays it all out so perfectly. You can see how each system has a specific job. Purple needs the past to maintain its identity. Blue needs the future to build a stable moral order. Orange, of course, needs the future for strategy. Green finds its truth in present moment harmony. And yellow actually has to reject the past to be able to adapt and innovate quickly. See, no one here is wrong. They're all just living in the precise time zone their psychological operating system requires. So, what's the point of all this? Well, it's way more than just a cool psychological theory. These correlations, these numbers, they're not just for academics. They actually unlock some incredibly powerful predictive tools that let us forecast the human fallout of our decisions before we even make them. This is where it gets really interesting. We can actually build a dynamic programming model that's kind of like a weather forecast for human behavior. It takes these temporal correlations as the atmospheric data, and it calculates the hidden emotional and psychological ripple effects of any action a leader might take. It literally makes the invisible visible. So let's run a quick forecast. Imagine a leader, probably running on that orange future-focused code, announces a bold new 5-year strategic plan. They're expecting everyone to be fired up. But the model filters that action through the profile of a turquoise thinking team member. And because of that negative correlation with future focus, it doesn't predict inspiration. It predicts the action will be felt as fragmentation, a stressful distraction from the urgent, holistic work that needs to be done right now.
And get this, the same exact action can create completely opposite results depending on who you're talking to. Let's say a company asks everyone to take a week of unpaid vacation to save money. A team with a strong purple code might see it as a shared, ritual sacrifice that actually strengthens their tribal bonds. We're all in this together. But a team full of orange individual achievers, they see it as a personal financial loss and a sign the company is failing. You can bet they're updating their LinkedIn profiles that same afternoon. The model can see both of those outcomes coming.
So you see, this isn't about reducing people to numbers. It's the complete opposite. It's about using math to finally give real, quantifiable weight to the stuff that actually runs an organization. The fears, the trust, the stress, the empathy. It's about translating those invisible human costs into a language that a spreadsheet can finally understand. When you start to see the world this way, it just changes everything. Understanding this hidden temporal code gives us a completely new equation for how we lead, how we manage, and how we talk to each other. So what can you actually do with this? Well, first, stop assuming your timeline is everybody's timeline. That call for a 5-year vision that gets you excited might be creating deep stress for someone else. Second, a lot of team conflict isn't about personality. It's a time zone collision. And here's the big one. A toxic workplace, one that's high in fear and low in trust, isn't just a moral problem anymore. We can now show that it is mathematically an inefficient one. But we have to add a really critical piece of nuance here. Is this turquoise focus on the present always a good thing? Is it the end goal? Not necessarily. Critics have some really valid points. They might argue it can lead to spiritual bypassing, using this idea of being in the now to avoid taking responsibility for huge future crises, like climate change, or that it could be a luxury only afforded by the privileged, or even lead to total strategic paralysis, when what we really need is a long-term plan. And all of this leaves us with one last big question. We started by challenging this simple idea about progress, and we've ended up here. If we now have the tools to actually calculate the hidden fears, the trust, and maybe even the conscience of an entire organization, what does it really mean to lead? Is it about having the best, most brilliant vision for the future? Or is it about having the deep wisdom to understand which time your people are actually living in, right now?